Sarah Jenkins stood in front of her office mirror, adjusting her colorful head wrap one last time before heading out for lunch. At 32 years old, she was one of the few black women who had made it to a senior position at her marketing firm in downtown Chicago. The spring air felt fresh as she walked down Michigan Avenue, her high heels clicking against the sidewalk. She wasn't planning on anything special that day, just her usual lunch break at Carlo's Cafe, where she would sit in her favorite corner spot and enjoy her chicken Caesar salad while checking her emails. But life had other plans for her. As Sarah pushed open the heavy glass door of the cafe, the familiar smell of coffee and fresh bread greeted her. That's when she first saw him. A man in a wheelchair was trying to reach for a menu that had fallen on the floor, but he couldn't bend down far enough to get it. Without thinking twice, Sarah walked over. "Let me help you with that," she said, picking up the menu and handing it to him. When he looked up, their eyes met, and Sarah felt something she hadn't felt in a long time, a spark. "Thank you," he said with a warm smile that made his brown eyes crinkle at the corners. "I'm Michael Thompson." His voice was deep and friendly, and despite sitting in a wheelchair, he carried himself with confidence. "I'm Sarah," she replied, noticing how handsome he was in his blue button-down shirt and neatly trimmed beard. She was about to walk away when he spoke again. "Would you like to join me for lunch? As a thank you for helping me?" Michael asked. There was something genuine in his voice that made Sarah pause. She looked at her watch. She had a meeting in an hour, but something told her this was more important. "Sure, why not?" she found herself saying. As they sat together, Sarah learned that Michael was a software engineer working for a big tech company. His disability came from an accident when he was young, but he talked about it matter-of-factly, without any self-pity. Instead, he told funny stories about coding disasters and office pranks that had Sarah laughing so hard her sides hurt. "So, you're telling me you accidentally sent cat videos to everyone in your company?" Sarah asked, wiping tears of laughter from her eyes. "Not just cat videos," Michael grinned. "Cat videos with heavy metal music playing in the background. At 3 a.m., to everyone, including the CEO. Sarah couldn't remember the last time she'd enjoyed a lunch so much. Michael was smart, funny, and treated her like an equal. He asked about her work in marketing and listened with real interest as she talked about her latest projects. Time flew by, and when Sarah checked her phone again, she was shocked. "Oh no, I've been here for 2 hours. My meeting started 45 minutes ago." Michael's face fell slightly. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to keep you so long." No, Sarah said quickly. This was nice." She hesitated for a moment before adding, "Maybe we could do it again sometime?" Michael's face lit up. "I'd like that." He pulled out his phone, and they exchanged numbers. As Sarah rushed back to her office, her mind was racing. She knew some people might have questions or doubts about her having lunch with a man in a wheelchair. Her mother would probably say something about life being hard enough as a black woman without adding more challenges. Her friends might tell her to be practical. But Sarah had always followed her heart, and her heart was telling her something important had just happened. She couldn't stop thinking about Michael's smile, his clever jokes, and the way he looked at her, not as a black woman, not as someone to pity or praise, but simply as Sarah. When she finally reached her office, her phone buzzed with a message. It was from Michael. "Thanks for making my ordinary Tuesday extraordinary. Coffee tomorrow." Sarah smiled and typed back yes, before walking into her boss's office to apologize for missing the meeting. She had no way of knowing it then, but that simple yes would change her life forever. The next few weeks flew by like a dream for Sarah. Every day, she found herself looking forward to her lunch breaks with Michael. They had made Carlo's Cafe their special meeting spot, and the staff had even started reserving their favorite table near the window. Sarah's best friend Lisa wasn't so excited about the situation. "Girl, are you sure about this?" Lisa asked one evening during their weekly wine night. "I mean, he seems nice and all, but he's in a wheelchair. Life is already hard enough for us black women. Have you thought about the future?" Sarah put down her wine glass and looked at her friend seriously. "Lisa, when I'm with Michael, I don't see the wheelchair. I see a man who makes me laugh, who's brilliant at his job, and who treats me better than any man I've ever dated." But Lisa wasn't the only one with doubts. Sarah's mother nearly dropped her phone when Sarah told her about Michael during their Sunday call. "Baby girl," her mother said slowly, "I want you to be happy. But have you thought about what people will say? a black woman with a disabled white man. Mama, it's 2024, Sarah replied firmly. And I don't care what people say. Despite the concerns from her family and friends, Sarah continued seeing Michael. Their coffee dates turned into dinner dates, and soon they were spending most of their free time together. Michael showed her that his disability didn't stop him from living a full life. One Saturday, he took her to an adaptive sports center where he played wheelchair basketball. Sarah watched in amazement as Michael moved across the court with incredible speed and skill, scoring point after point. His teammates welcomed her warmly, and she found herself cheering louder than anyone else in the gym. "You're full of surprises," Sarah told him after the game, still impressed by his athletic abilities. Michael grinned. "Life's too short to let anything hold you back," he said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Even if some things need to be done differently." Their relationship wasn't always easy. Sometimes people would stare at them in restaurants. A beautiful black woman and a white man in a wheelchair. Some would whisper or point, but Michael and Sarah had learned to ignore them, creating their own bubble of happiness. One rainy evening, as they sat in Michael's apartment watching movies, he opened up about his accident. He was 15 when a car crash damaged his spine, changing his life forever. "But you know what?" he said, holding Sarah's hand. "That accident taught me to see people for who they really are. Those who stayed, those who left, and those like you, who see past the chair." Sarah squeezed his hand. "And you've taught me that love doesn't care about what others think it should look like." Their relationship grew stronger each day. Michael's parents, though living in Boston, made an effort to know Sarah through video calls. His mother, Linda, was especially warm, always asking about Sarah's work and sharing family recipes. His father, Robert, took longer to warm up, but even he could see how happy Michael was with Sarah. At work, Sarah's confidence grew. She started speaking up more in meetings, pitching bold ideas, and earning recognition for her creativity. Michael's support and belief in her helped her believe more in herself. "You're amazing," Michael told her one evening as she excitedly shared news about a successful presentation. "You're changing the game in your industry, just like you changed my life." 6 months into their relationship, Sarah realized something important. Love doesn't see color, ability, or what others think. It sees the heart, the soul, and the person inside. Every time Michael smiled at her, held her hand, or made her laugh until her stomach hurt, she knew she had found something real. As spring turned to summer, their love story continued to unfold, proving that the strongest connections come from the heart, not from what others see on the outside. Sarah and Michael were breaking barriers, but more importantly, they were building a love that was genuine, deep, and real. Summer turned to fall, and Sarah and Michael's love grew stronger with each passing day. They had fallen into a comfortable routine, spending most evenings together either at his accessible apartment or at her cozy place on the north side of Chicago. What started as simple lunch dates had turned into something neither of them had expected to find. Michael was different from any man Sarah had dated before. He remembered small details about her life that even she sometimes forgot, like how he always kept her favorite mint tea in his kitchen, or how he'd send her funny cat memes when he knew she had a tough meeting at work. One cool October evening, Michael suggested they order from their favorite Chinese restaurant. "Let's eat in the park today," he said with a mysterious smile. "The leaves are changing colors, and it's perfect outside." Sarah agreed, not thinking much about it. She pushed Michael's wheelchair along the park path, both of them enjoying the beautiful fall colors. The trees were painted in shades of red, orange, and gold, and the setting sun made everything look magical. They reached a quiet spot near the lake, one they had visited many times before, but today was different. Sarah noticed small lights hanging in the trees around them, twinkling like stars. "How did these get here?" she asked, looking around in wonder. Michael grinned. "I had some help from the guys at the basketball team. They set everything up this morning." Before Sarah could ask more questions, she saw Michael's sister Emma walking toward them, carrying a basket. Emma had become one of Sarah's closest friends over the past months, always supporting their relationship and helping plan special dates. "Your dinner is served," Emma said with a big smile, setting up a beautiful picnic spread on a table that had been decorated with flowers and candles. After making sure everything was perfect, she hugged them both and quietly left. As they enjoyed their meal, Michael seemed nervous, something Sarah rarely saw in him. He kept checking his phone and looking around. Is everything okay? Sarah asked, reaching for his hand across the table. Everything's perfect, he replied. Actually, more than perfect. He took a deep breath. Sarah, these past months have been the happiest of my life. When I first saw you in that cafe, I never imagined I'd be lucky enough to fall in love with someone as amazing as you. Sarah's heart started beating faster as Michael wheeled himself to her side of the table. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box. People see us and they might think we're an odd couple, a black woman and a white man in a wheelchair. But what they don't see is how perfectly we fit together. How you complete my sentences, how you understand my jokes, how you see me for who I am, not what I can or can't do. Tears started forming in Sarah's eyes as Michael opened the box, revealing a beautiful diamond ring. My disability means I can't get down on one knee, he said with a small laugh, but my heart is completely kneeling before you. Sarah Jenkins, will you marry me? Sarah could barely see through her tears of joy. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, 1,000 times yes. As Michael slipped the ring on her finger, cheers erupted from behind the trees. Their families and friends emerged. Sarah's parents, Michael's parents who had flown in from Boston, Lisa, Emma, and even the guys from Michael's basketball team. Everyone had been hiding, waiting to celebrate this moment. Sarah's mother, who had once been worried about their relationship, was now crying tears of joy. Michael's father, Robert, who had taken time to warm up to Sarah, was beaming with pride. The basketball team guys were whistling and cheering. I can't believe you planned all this, Sarah said, admiring her ring while wiping away happy tears. I had lots of help, Michael smiled, pulling her down for a kiss. And this is just the beginning of our story. As their families and friends gathered around to congratulate them, Sarah and Michael held hands, knowing that their love was stronger than any obstacle they might face. They had found something rare and precious, a love that saw no barriers, only possibilities. The fall evening turned to night, the little lights in the trees continued to twinkle, and two hearts that had found each other by chance were now joined forever in love. The morning of Sarah and Michael's wedding dawned bright and clear. Sarah stood in front of a full-length mirror in the bridal suite of the Grand Lake Hotel, hardly believing this day had finally arrived. Her white wedding dress sparkled in the sunlight streaming through the windows, and her mother was carefully adjusting her veil. "Baby girl, you look like an angel," her mother said, tears forming in her eyes. The dress was perfect. Sarah had chosen a design that would look beautiful whether she was standing or sitting next to Michael in his wheelchair during the ceremony. Lisa, her best friend and maid of honor, was running around the room making sure everything was perfect. Even though she had once had doubts about Sarah's relationship with Michael, she had become their biggest supporter over the past year. "Girl, wait until you see the hall," Lisa exclaimed, fixing Sarah's bouquet of white and purple flowers. "It looks magical, and Michael's already there, looking so handsome in his tuxedo you wouldn't believe." In another room of the hotel, Michael was getting ready with his groomsmen. His hands were shaking slightly as his brother James helped him with his bow tie. The special wheelchair they had ordered for the wedding was decorated with small white flowers matching Sarah's bouquet. "Nervous, bro?" James asked, noticing Michael checking his watch for the 10th time. "Not about marrying Sarah," Michael smiled. "She's the best thing that ever happened to me. I just want everything to be perfect for her." The wedding hall was filled with a mix of both families and friends. Michael's large Irish-American family from Boston sat on one side, while Sarah's African-American family and friends occupied the other. But there was no real division. The two families had grown close over the past year, united by the love between Sarah and Michael. The ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m., and at exactly 1:55, the music started playing. Michael wheeled himself to the front of the hall, looking handsome in his black tuxedo. His eyes were fixed on the double doors at the back, waiting for his bride. When the wedding march began playing, the doors opened and Sarah appeared on her father's arm. There wasn't a dry eye in the house. She looked stunning in her dress, her dark skin glowing, her smile lighting up the entire room. As Mr. Jenkins walked his daughter down the aisle, he remembered how worried he had been when Sarah first told him about Michael. Now, seeing the love between them, he couldn't imagine a better match for his little girl. When they reached the front, Sarah's father placed her hand in Michael's, giving them both a warm smile. The priest, who had worked with them to create a ceremony that celebrated both their cultures, began the service. Love knows no boundaries, the priest said, looking at the gathered crowd. It doesn't see color, ability, or disability. It sees only the heart, and these two hearts before us today beat as one. During their vows, Sarah and Michael had written their own words. Michael went first, his voice strong and clear. Sarah, you saw me for who I am, not what I can or can't do. You've made me a better man, and I promise to spend every day trying to be worthy of your love. Sarah's voice trembled with emotion as she spoke. Michael, you taught me that love doesn't care about what others think it should look like. You're my best friend, my support, my everything. I promise to always be by your side, in good times and bad. Then came the moment that surprised everyone. With the help of his brother and a special support device hidden under his tuxedo, Michael slowly raised himself from his wheelchair to stand for their first kiss as husband and wife. Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. He had been practicing this for months in secret. The hall erupted in cheers and applause as they kissed. Both families were crying and clapping, celebrating not just a marriage, but a love that had broken down every barrier in its path. As they made their way back down the aisle, now as Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, confetti rained down around them. Sarah couldn't stop smiling, and Michael's eyes were shining with joy. Their wedding was more than just a ceremony. It was proof that true love knows no boundaries. After the beautiful ceremony, everyone moved to the grand ballroom for the reception. The room looked like something out of a fairy tale, with white and purple flowers everywhere, twinkling lights hanging from the ceiling, and tables decorated with silver centerpieces. A special dance floor had been installed in the center of the room, surrounded by elegantly set tables. Sarah and Michael made their entrance as the DJ announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. and Mrs. Thompson." The room erupted in applause and cheers. Sarah was pushing Michael's wheelchair, both of them smiling so brightly they could have lit up the whole room by themselves. The newlyweds made their way to the main table, which had been specially designed to accommodate Michael's wheelchair comfortably. Sarah's father, Mr. Jenkins, stood up to give the first toast of the evening. He held up his champagne glass, looking at the happy couple with tears in his eyes. "When Sarah first told me about Michael," he began, his deep voice filled with emotion, "I had my doubts. Not because of his disability, but because as a father, I always worried if anyone would be good enough for my little girl. But Michael proved me wrong in the best possible way. He showed us all that love doesn't need legs to stand strong." The room filled with laughter and applause. Next was Michael's mother's turn to speak. Mrs. Thompson stood up, holding her glass with slightly shaking hands. "Sarah," she said, smiling at her new daughter-in-law, "you brought light back into my son's life in a way I never thought possible. You saw past the wheelchair and found the wonderful man I always knew he was. Welcome to our family, dear." As the waiters began serving champagne for the traditional toast, Sarah noticed something odd. Michael whispered to the waiter and got a glass of water instead of champagne. She thought this was strange because Michael usually enjoyed a glass of wine or champagne at special occasions. "Everything okay?" she asked him quietly. "Perfect," he replied with a mysterious smile. "Just perfect." The reception was in full swing now. The DJ was playing a mix of songs that got everyone moving. Sarah's cousins were teaching Michael's relatives some dance moves, while the older folks from both families sat together, sharing stories and laughing like old friends. Lisa, the maid of honor, got up to give her speech. "When these two first started dating," she said, "I was the worst friend ever. I had all these worries and doubts. But Sarah and Michael taught me something important. Love doesn't care about what people think it should look like. It just is." Sarah looked around the room, taking in all the happy faces. Her new in-laws were chatting with her aunts like they'd known each other for years. Michael's basketball teammates from the Adaptive Sports Center were there too, some in wheelchairs, others not, all celebrating together. The food was being served. They had chosen a menu that mixed both their family traditions. There was Irish stew alongside Southern fried chicken, Boston cream pie next to sweet potato pie. It was a perfect blend, just like their families had become. Sarah noticed Michael checking his watch several times, seeming both excited and nervous about something. When she asked him what was wrong, he just squeezed her hand and said, "You'll see soon enough, my love." The first round of drinks was almost finished, and the party was really getting started. The dance floor was filling up, with people moving to the rhythm of the music. Sarah's little cousins were running around, playing with the ribbons from the decorations, while the adults were enjoying the celebration. Just then, Michael motioned to the DJ, who nodded in response. Sarah had no idea what was about to happen, but she could feel something special was coming. The air in the room seemed to change, filled with anticipation. Little did Sarah know, but the biggest surprise of her life was just moments away. As she sat there, holding her new husband's hand, she had no idea that everything she thought she knew about Michael was about to change forever. The DJ's music faded to a soft background melody as Michael wheeled himself to the center of the dance floor. Sarah watched curiously from her seat, wondering what her new husband was planning. The room grew quiet as everyone's attention turned to Michael. "Sarah, my love," Michael began, his voice clear and strong in the quiet room. "I have something to tell you, something I've been keeping secret for the past year." He gestured to his brother James, who walked over with what looked like a set of metal crutches. Sarah's heart started beating faster. She had never seen these devices before, and confusion filled her mind. The other guests seemed just as puzzled, except for a few people: Michael's parents, his doctor, and his physical therapist, who were all smiling knowingly. "For the past 12 months, Michael continued, while we were planning our wedding, I was also part of a special medical program." He paused, taking a deep breath. "A new type of treatment that helped repair some of the damage from my accident." The room was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Sarah's hands were trembling as she watched Michael grab the support bars James had brought. Slowly, carefully, Michael began to push himself up from his wheelchair. "Oh my God," Sarah whispered, her hands covering her mouth. Tears started flowing down her cheeks as she watched her husband, the man she had known only in a wheelchair, gradually rise to his feet. Michael stood there, supported by the bars, his legs shaking slightly but holding firm. He was standing. Actually standing. Sarah couldn't believe her eyes. Their guests gasped and murmured in amazement. "I wanted to tell you so many times," Michael said, his own eyes wet with tears. "Especially during the hard days of therapy, when all I wanted was your support. But I dreamed of this moment, giving you this surprise on our wedding day." Sarah got up from her chair, her legs feeling like jelly. She walked toward Michael, not caring that her mascara was running from her tears. When she reached him, she touched his face gently, as if making sure he was real. "How?" was all she could manage to say. "Remember all those extra physical therapy sessions I said I needed?" Michael smiled. "And those mysterious doctor appointments. I was learning to walk again bit by bit. The doctors said I might never walk normally, but with these support aids, I can stand, I can take steps." To prove his point, Michael slowly moved one foot forward, then another. The room erupted in cheers and applause. Sarah's father was crying openly now, and Michael's mother was sobbing into her husband's shoulder. "But why didn't you tell me?" Sarah asked, still in shock. "Because you fell in love with me exactly as I was," Michael replied. "You never once made me feel less than whole in my wheelchair. You loved me completely, without wanting or expecting me to change. That's why I knew you were the one, and I wanted to give you this gift, not because either of us needed it, but because love sometimes brings miracles." Lisa rushed forward with a chair for Sarah, who felt like her legs might give out from the shock. The other guests were wiping away tears, watching this incredible moment unfold. "I may not be able to dance with you the way other grooms do," Michael said, still standing with the support aids. "But I can stand here with you, hold you close, and sway to the music. Will you dance with me, Mrs. Thompson?" The DJ started playing their special song, At Last, by Etta James. Sarah stood up and stepped into Michael's arms. They swayed together, the first dance as husband and wife, both standing on their feet. Around them, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. Both families watched in awe as love, determination, and modern medicine came together to create a moment none of them would ever forget. Sarah looked into her husband's eyes and whispered, "You never cease to amaze me, Michael Thompson." "And I never will," he replied with a smile, holding her close as they continued their magical first dance. After their emotional first dance, Michael and Sarah sat together in a quiet corner of the reception hall. Guests were still wiping away tears and talking about the incredible surprise they had just witnessed. Sarah had so many questions, and now was finally the time for Michael to tell her everything. "It all started a year ago," Michael began, holding Sarah's hand tightly. My doctor called me about a new medical trial they were doing at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. They were testing a combination of stem cell therapy and advanced physical rehabilitation for people with spinal cord injuries. Sarah remembered all those times Michael had extra doctor appointments, how sometimes he seemed extra tired, but had brushed it off with a smile. So that's why you were always so busy on Tuesday afternoons, she said, the pieces finally coming together. Yes, Michael nodded. The treatment was intense. 3 days a week, I would go through hours of therapy. Some days were so hard I wanted to give up. But thinking about surprising you today kept me going. Just then, a tall man in a gray suit approached their table. Mrs. Thompson, he said with a warm smile, I'm Dr. Rodriguez, Michael's primary physician for the trial. He sat down with them, ready to explain more about the groundbreaking treatment that had helped Michael. What Michael achieved is remarkable, Dr. Rodriguez explained. Out of 20 patients in the trial, he showed the most progress. His determination was incredible. Even on days when he was in pain, he never missed a session. Sarah turned to Michael, her eyes filling with tears again. You went through all of that alone. You should have told me. I could have been there for you. Michael squeezed her hand. I wasn't alone. My parents knew, and so did James. They helped me keep the secret. And honestly, the thought of surprising you today gave me strength on the hardest days. Dr. Rodriguez showed them some before and after videos on his tablet. Sarah watched in amazement as the videos showed Michael's progress, from barely being able to move his legs to taking his first supported steps. Will he be able to walk normally someday? Sarah asked hopefully. The doctor smiled kindly. Medicine has come a long way, but we need to be realistic. Michael will always need some support to walk, and he'll still use his wheelchair most of the time. But being able to stand and take some steps, that's a huge victory. Michael's physical therapist, Jenny, came over next. She had been hiding in the background all day, ready to help if needed. Michael was my most dedicated patient, she said proudly. He worked harder than anyone I've ever seen. Even when the pain was bad, he kept pushing forward. Sarah learned that Michael had fallen many times during his therapy sessions. He had bruises he had to hide from her, moments of frustration he couldn't share. But he never gave up. Remember all those times I said I was working late? Michael said. I was actually at therapy, learning to use these support aids. The hardest part was keeping it from you. Every time I made progress, I wanted to tell you so badly. Their families gathered around as Michael continued explaining. His mother showed Sarah videos she had secretly recorded of Michael's first steps in therapy. His father talked about flying in from Boston every month to attend his son's medical appointments. My flight delays weren't always because of bad weather, his father admitted with a smile. Sometimes I was just making excuses to come see Michael's progress. Sarah's parents listened in amazement. Her father, who had once been worried about his daughter marrying a man in a wheelchair, was now beaming with pride at his son-in-law's determination. You know what this means, right? Sarah said, looking at Michael with love in her eyes. No more secrets. From now on, we face everything together. Michael nodded, pulling her close. Together, he agreed. Always together. Around them, the reception continued. The DJ played music, people danced, and the celebration went on. But in their quiet corner, Sarah and Michael held each other, knowing that their love story had just added another remarkable chapter. The wedding reception continued late into the night, but it was more than just a celebration of marriage now. It had become a celebration of miracles, love, and new beginnings. As the evening went on, Sarah and Michael shared their first meal as husband and wife, both sitting at their table, his wheelchair nearby but not needed at that moment. So, this is why you wouldn't drink champagne earlier, Sarah said with a laugh, finally understanding all the little mysteries that had puzzled her throughout the day. You needed to keep your balance perfect for the surprise. Michael nodded, grinning. Dr. Rodriguez's orders. No alcohol before the big reveal. But now, he raised his champagne glass, clinking it with hers. Now we can properly celebrate. Their guests had formed a circle around them on the dance floor. Michael's basketball teammates from the Adaptive Sports Center were teaching everyone the seated dance routine they had created, showing that joy and movement come in all forms. Sarah's young cousins were especially excited, spinning around in the hotel's spare wheelchairs, learning that having wheels could be fun. Lisa, who had been crying on and off all evening, came up to them with red eyes. I feel so bad about all my doubts in the beginning, she said, hugging them both. You two just proved that anything is possible with love. Don't feel bad, Michael told her. Those doubts made our love stronger. We had to prove ourselves to the world, and we did it together. Sarah's mother was busy showing everyone the videos she had taken of the big surprise, while Michael's parents shared stories about his secret therapy sessions. The two families had completely merged, bonded by love and amazement at what they had witnessed. Dr. Rodriguez and Jenny, the physical therapist, were surrounded by curious guests asking questions about the treatment. They explained patiently, making sure everyone understood that while Michael's progress was remarkable, it was his determination and positive attitude that made it possible. You know, Michael said to Sarah as they watched their families mingle, I may not be able to climb mountains or run marathons, but I can stand beside you when we exchange presents on Christmas morning. I can sway with you in the kitchen when our song comes on the radio. Sometimes that's all the miracle we need. Sarah wiped away a tear. You've given me so much more than the ability to stand, she said softly. You've shown me what real strength looks like, what real love looks like. As the night went on, they talked about their honeymoon plans. They had booked a special accessible suite at a beautiful beach resort, but now their plans could include short walks on the beach at sunset, supported, slow, and perfect in their own way. Just think, Michael said, one day we'll tell our kids this story, about how their dad kept a year-long secret just to surprise their mom on their wedding day. Sarah's eyes lit up at the mention of their future family, and we'll tell them that love doesn't need to look like anyone else's idea of perfect. It just needs to be real. Near the end of the night, Michael stood one more time, supported by his aides, to thank all their guests. His voice was full of emotion as he spoke. Today, I got to surprise my wife with something amazing, he said. But the real miracle happened months ago, when this beautiful, strong black woman looked past my wheelchair and saw just me. When she ignored every raised eyebrow and whispered comment, and chose love instead. Sarah stood beside him, their hands clasped together. And I got my miracle too, she added. I found a man who shows me every day that limitations are just challenges waiting to be overcome, that love can make impossible things possible. As the reception came to an end, their guests lined up to blow bubbles as the newlyweds prepared to leave. Michael sat in his wheelchair with Sarah perched on his lap, both of them laughing as bubbles floated around them. They had started their journey as an unlikely couple, a black woman and a white man in a wheelchair. They were ending their wedding day as proof that love knows no boundaries, that miracles can happen, and that the best surprises come to those who believe in the power of love. And this was just the beginning of their story.